Hello, everybody. Good morning. Or it's morning for me. I hope it's morning for you. Listen, today I'm going to talk about a topic that I really feel impacts a lot of people, and it's referred to as impostor syndrome. And it's very, very common, was coined actually in 1978 by clinical psychologists as this syndrome that affects high achievers. It affects an ability to internalize external recognition such that they are constantly living in fear of being discovered as a fraud, that their achievements could be wrongly attributed to them, or that they're misrepresenting their skills or talents. And this actually impacts 70% of high achievers. And we see it a lot in coaching. We see it a lot in coaching because to lead an ordinary life, you don't need coaching. People who are drawn to coaching are trying to lead extraordinary lives, and they're generally high achievers. And it's very hard to get through a high achieving life without feeling at least some amount of imposter syndrome at some point in your career as you're experiencing very challenging roles where you feel you're stretching yourself. And the reality is it's serious business. I mean, imposter syndrome can cause anxiety, stress, depression, real lack of motivation. Like, it can actually be kind of crippling fear. And it's really a waste of energy and motivation. So today I'm going to talk to you about an exercise that really, really helps get rid of imposter syndrome. In fact, I think if you do this really effectively, you can inoculate yourself from imposter syndrome. But before I do that, I want to explain to you a tiny bit of the things that I think heighten its intensity. I'm going to talk about a metaprogram, and metaprograms are basically thinking habits around what we call external versus internal thinking patterns. So thinking habits are basically on a spectrum, and we all apply all of them, but we do become dominant in one kind of thinking habit or another. And if you think about the external versus internal thinking habit, people that are dominant on external, they start to value external data points or external feedback or external thoughts higher than their internal. So people that are very, very instinctual and sort of have that instinct and gut are very internal. People that are fact-finding, solicit feedback, are constantly kind of engaging with others to support their decision-making process are generally probably a little more dominant external. And for imposter syndrome, people that are dominant external actually feel it materialize for themselves more because they've become throughout their career dependent on external recognition for a measure of their own achievement. And what's really challenging for a lot of us who are, and I am, external dominant, is that throughout your career you receive a lot, as your early career you receive a lot of external recognition in the form of promotions, larger teams, increased responsibility, prestige, status, financial rewards. So in many ways you become kind of addicted to these very, very concrete pieces of external evidence that you're doing a good job. And then the more senior you get, actually the less you get them. So just as you're sort of addicted to them, you get less of them. You get less of them because people already say, like, you have the power, the title, the perks, like you don't get a pep talk every day. Like, so naturally people stop doing it as often, but also I believe your absorption rate changes. Depending on how challenging your role is for you, even when you do get positive recognition, you don't absorb it. It doesn't always come from the people you want it from. It doesn't come in the form that you want it from. And so basically, I think the combination between needing external recognition plus getting less sheer volume of external recognition the more achieving you are, in combination with the fact that you're unable to absorb it, really adds to the challenge of being motivated and can add to your imposter syndrome. So today what we're going to play with a little bit is how do we reduce our dominance on external recognition? Because if you reduce your dominant thinking habit on external recognition, you focus on the internal metrics of your own achievement, you will be much less susceptible to imposter syndrome. So let me just give you an example of this spectrum, and I'll let you guys do the same example, but yours might seem really similar on the external front. So external recognition are things like promotions, responsibility, larger teams, financial rewards, and fancy titles. Now, if you look at that period of time, an intense period of time where you're receiving an enormous amount of external recognition, I want you now to reflect on what was going on internally. What are the measures that were happening internally in parallel with them? And so if I think about that, it was me reaching for stretch opportunities. It was me reaching for learning. It was me deeply enjoying the collaborative nature of my teams. It was me trying to do my best to make a positive contribution to every situation I was in, regardless of outcome. And it was me really enjoying collaboration, people development, team building. So if I look at the internal proof that I was achieving versus the external proof, you can see how different it is. And so the trick here is to look at those characteristics, which are equally powerful in terms of your motivation, and creating and strengthening your habit to look towards those as an indication of whether or not you are achieving or not. And what you'll find is when you use those as your measure, in my case, if I use these as my measure, am I applying my skills and capability? Am I focused on the people? Am I focused on stretching and learning? Am I focused on reaching for opportunities? You can't find me an imposter against those things. It'll absolutely validate that that's what I'm doing, right? And so if that is my measure, then you become quite in touch with your motivation from an internal recognition perspective and not as dependent on external. So here's the tip for the week. This week, just reflect on what are the external recognition areas, what are your, in parallel, at the same time, internal recognition evidence proof points, and work very hard to begin to develop a thinking habit that leans towards your internal recognition versus your external, and then you won't feel like an imposter. Hope this helps. Give it a try. Let me know if you like it, and please share it if you do. Take care. Bye.